She's the Man is our next entry into our high school adaptations of classic literature series, and it's written by the same team as 10 Things I Hate About You. It is also a Shakespearean adaptation, this time of Twelfth Night. She's the Man came out in 2006 and was moderately successful at the time, but now has a cult following. The film is about Viola Hastings, played to near universal praise by Amanda Bynes. Viola is an exceptional soccer player dating another exceptional soccer player. She walks onto the field on her first day of practice for the next season to the news that the girls' team has been defunded. She is outraged and demands to try out for the boys' team. She's sure she could get on, the idea of which gets laughed off as completely ridiculous.
Girls aren't as fast as boys.
What? Or strong, or as athletic. This is not me talking. It's a scientific fact.
She breaks up with her boyfriend instantly for being an unsupportive ass, and then opportunity knocks. Her twin brother Sebastian is supposed to be heading off to boarding school. But instead, he's going to ditch school for a few months without his parents noticing and hit the road with his band. So, Viola decides to cross-dress with the help of her stylist/gay best friend. As Sebastian, Viola goes to the boarding school to try out for the boys' soccer team to prove that girls can be just as good as boys at soccer. She, as Sebastian, gets roomed with Duke Orsino, played by a very young Channing Tatum. At first, Duke thinks his roommate Sebastian is weird. But Viola and her friends stage a scene for Sebastian to look like a fantastic womanizer.
Just know, I'll never forget you, Sebastian. Ever! Never!
And so Duke starts to respect Sebastian and begins to open up to him about his huge crush, Olivia. Unfortunately, Olivia has a crush on Sebastian. But we are watching Duke and Sebastian/Viola start to become vulnerable with each other.
I'm not really good at talking to girls.
Why? You're hot.
What?
You're an appealing guy, man. Guy, man.
Look, I don't know. I just always say the wrong thing.
Some gender norms are being reified, but some are breaking down. Viola starts to crush on Duke, and Duke starts to help Viola/Sebastian become a better soccer player so that she can make the team. Meanwhile, in her life as a girl, Viola is supposed to be preparing for her debutante ball. She and her mother are in a constant fight about her clothes. Her mom is forcing her to perform a kind of femininity that Viola hates and actively resists.
I will pick out my own dress. And no, I will not wear heels. Because heels are a male invention designed to make a woman's butt look smaller. And to make it harder for them to run away.
In one of the preparation events for this ball, Viola, dressed as a girl, is all femmed up and has to participate in a kissing booth. It is there that Duke and Viola, as a girl, kiss. Sparks fly. Hijinks ensue. Sebastian comes back from touring. Viola as Sebastian gets outed as a girl, and both she and her brother show their genitals to the whole school for their quote-unquote true sexes to be publicly confirmed.
Is it just me, or does this soccer game have more nudity than most?
Viola gets to play in the big game as herself. But Duke, well, he feels a fool. He feels betrayed. He feels like his manhood is confused. But at the debutante ball, all is made right. Once Viola is in her dress and heels, Duke is ready to admit his feelings for her. They walk down the catwalk of the ball, cisgendered, and make out to great applause. I find this to be a complex movie. I can't always follow the logic of what it is trying to say about gender or who or what is being made fun of at any given point. One of the flaws of this movie, in my opinion, is that while some of its feminist messages are well-intended, like girls can play soccer just as well as boys can, its delivery is messy at best. Here is Ariana reading a quote by Jennifer Clement from the article, The Post-Feminist Mystique, Feminism and Shakespearean Adaptation in 10 Things I Hate About You and She's the Man.
Though Viola's act as Sebastian apparently fools everyone she meets, it is actually so inadequate that a charitable viewer can only assume that all the people around her are supposed to be blinded by their assumption that no girl could act such a role. These slippages in Viola's impersonation reinforce the film's conservative belief in essential gender roles. Viola may act tomboyishly at times, even when she is not in character, but she is so fundamentally a girl that she cannot maintain the Sebastian act consistently. More significantly, by interposing scenes of Viola's debutante activities with Sebastian's more masculine activities, the movie rarely goes more than 1 or 2 scenes without presenting Viola as a feminine, nubile, and desirable young woman. Her body-obscuring boys' clothes are regularly displaced by body-revealing dresses, and her short hair wig comes off to remind viewers that, in fact, she has reassuringly feminine long hair.
One of the questions to me about She's the Man as a document is how much it actually reflects how teenagers acted and felt in 2006. This is a topic taken up by Laurie Osborne in the article 12th Night's Cinematic Adolescence. In this clip, you will hear Ariana, as Laurie, mention the film Just One of the Guys. This was a movie that came out in 1985 that has a similar plot to She's the Man. It has a woman pretending to be a man in a high school setting and then being outed and getting a straight, cis romantic ending.
These intercinematic associations raise the question of why Just One of the Guys, so disparaged when first released, has been not only remade, but also ultimately remarketed as a Shakespearean homage in She's the Man. One reason may be that the persistent recycling in teen films reflect the oddity of their production. They're one of the few genres where the target audience does not participate in film production. While young actors may contribute to a teen film like She's the Man through star power, as Amanda Bynes does, or through character development, as the producer suggests Channing Tatum did, adults still write, direct, and produce teen films. As a result, those involved in recent productions grew up with films like Just One of the Guys and are revisiting the materials that they encountered as teenagers. In fact, Fickman asked Amanda Bynes to watch Just One of the Guys to prepare for playing Viola.
She's the Man is, of course, a movie entirely on its own terms, but it is also a movie in conversation with Just One of the Guys, with 12th Night, with 10 Things I Hate About You, and on and on. Maybe that's why She's the Man's message is so unclear, because it's a conversation that's happening in an echo chamber and not a conversation that's happening with reality. But really, I think the message is unclear because the film is unclear about how to sell tickets to a movie across the United States that is so obviously about queerness. I'm Vanessa Zoltan.
I'm Hannah McGregor.
And this is Hot and Bothered. Hannah, I have a thesis for you walking right into today.
Oh, wow. Starting with a thesis. That's bold.
This movie is not about love.
Yeah, I think that is fair. I don't think that we get enough time with Amanda Bynes and Channing Tatum knowing that they are attempting a romantic relationship to really be able to say that this is a love story. But it's a something story, and it does end with kissing, which makes it a romance.
I understand how it hits the genre conventions. I think that this is a movie about crushes. I do think it's a great high school movie about how arbitrary crushes and obsessions are, how our brain links on to things and just like becomes an obsessive circle about that thing, and that it could kind of be anything because hormones are wild.
Yeah. I think it is very much a movie about desire. And I think it's very much a movie about gender. And I think it's very much a movie about relationship. It's not really about romantic love.
No, like when we ask ourselves, what does this movie believe about love? I'm like, oh, nothing that I could suss out.
Oh, I disagree, but we can get into that.
I think it can teach us things about like dating and crushes, but about love. Do you know what? I'll say this. Nothing I want to learn. Nothing I want to learn.
I mean, I don't have a thesis, but I think this movie has a thesis about love.
Yeah, tell me.
I think this movie's thesis about love is that toxic masculinity and the way that it refuses vulnerability and treats women as objects is directly opposed to the possibilities of romantic love. And that men, in order to gain romantic love, if that is a thing that they are interested in, need to reject the culture of toxic masculinity. And I think we see that with like all our main male characters.
I'm trying to think if I think the movie believes that or if you are so smart. But say more. I can see moments of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what we have as our sort of central tension is that Duke, Channing Tatum's character, has become obsessed with Olivia, primarily because he sees her as a acquisition, right? She's the hottest girl in school and he wants her. He doesn't seem to know anything about her or like enjoy talking to her, but he's like, I am a hot guy. This is a hot girl. I would like to have her.
Can I already push back though? I disagree that it's acquisition. I agree that it is not about her as a person, but
yeah,
she makes him an inarticulate, blubbering idiot in a way that implies that there's real feeling there, which to me means that it's not entirely transactional, that it's not like me hot man, you hot girl, we must be together. It seems that he is like genuinely attracted to her and is conflating physical desire and attraction with feelings for her.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if there's much differentiation between that in this movie.
I agree.
But I do think that like one of the main arcs is that he has no idea how to go about talking to her.
Yes.
Because the tools he has been equipped with for interacting with women are all about objectifying women.
Right.
And we know that Viola, disguised as Sebastian, her twin brother, is fully aware of this dynamic because initially, in order to fit in with the other guys who are reasonably suspicious of her, because her behavior is unhinged, basically plays this game with her two best girlfriends in which she like sets up a sort of series of skits where her best friends pretend to be her ex-lovers and like portrays herself as sexually desirable and as belittling women. And that is the thing that makes them be like, whoa, you must have value as a man, which is like a very clear commentary on how men establish their sense of value. And it's critiqued explicitly in the film. Like the scene I have selected for us to talk about on Patreon is the scene where we see Duke say really explicitly to Viola as Sebastian, I hate the way you talk about women. And so I think there's a real clear, like, there is a performance of masculinity that pushes away vulnerability, pushes away intimacy, makes men feel like in order to be desirable to the opposite sex, but also in order to have social standing among each other, and I think maybe even more importantly, in order to have social standing among each other, they have to perform this kind of brazen disdain for women, and that behavior renders real emotional and romantic connection impossible. None of these guys get anything like even a fun possibility of a relationship until they render themselves vulnerable in some way and reject this sort of performance of toxic masculinity.
Yeah, I think that that's even in the premise of Viola's relationship with her first boyfriend, right? Like, she's super into him when he treats her well. He's like, you're the best soccer player. Like, you are better than half of the soccer players on the men's team. And she's like really turned on by him and wants to make out with him all the time. And she straight up tells him, you used to be a bad kisser and now you're a good kisser because I taught you.
I trained you.
Yeah. And he's like kind of fine with that. He's like, I used to be bad. Oh no. But like, I don't know. Let's keep kissing. And then as soon as he performs masculinity publicly for his soccer team and like won't admit that objectively, whatever that means about sports, she is better at soccer than his fellow teammates, she breaks up with him so fast. And that is my favorite part of the movie. She's like, treat me bad once. Bye.
100%.
Gaslight me once. Done with you, sir. I flippin' loved it.
It's so good. Like, Viola as a character has no doubt about her worth.
Yeah.
And that is like really delightful to see in a movie that is about a teenage girl.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the stories we get about teenage girls involve a lot of like pretty crushing self-doubt. And like legit, a lot of us who have at some point in our lives been teenage girls have experienced some pretty crushing self-doubt. But it's really fun to watch a like romantic coming of age kind of movie where the girl is just like, oh no, I'm great exactly as I am. There's no need for me to change.
No to debutante ball, no to dresses, yes to soccer. Like total clarity on who she is. The first 15 minutes of this movie, I'm like putty in the palm of its hands.
Did it lose you when Amanda Bynes started doing that inexplicable Southern accent?
You know, in Amanda Bynes' defense, the only way to sound like a man is to sound Southern.
I couldn't agree more. All men are Southern.
All men are Southern.
That's just a fact.
Like, this is just, we walk through the world.
Okay, so I spent a lot of time on my thesis. Tell me a little bit about what you think this movie believes about love.
I think, first of all, this movie thinks that you should not date people who don't believe in you. Like, Sebastian, her twin brother, right? He has a girlfriend who doesn't believe in his music career. She's a joke throughout the entire movie. He dumps her. He meets a girl who really likes his lyrics. That's who he ends up with, and that's how you know they're meant to be together. Viola is dating a guy who stops believing in her and her soccer skills, right? She like meets a guy who finds out that she's amazing at soccer, and rather than being threatened by it, right, like loves it. And regardless of his personal feelings toward her in that moment, and the fact that he's angry at her in the moment where they play this big game together, treats her like an equal. And so I do think that this movie thinks women should not be with men who don't support them.
And that men shouldn't be with women who don't support them. Like it's
absolutely.
It's
right. With Sebastian.
Equal opportunity need to have people see you for who you actually are.
Yeah. And I really like that. I think this movie believes in the power of cheese, which I'm very pro.
Absolutely important. That's one of our major romantic gestures is the gifting of a large wheel of Gouda.
A huge wheel of Gouda, which
I was like, that must have been a very expensive wheel of Gouda.
I was worrying about that too. I was like, she spent $300 on that wheel of Gouda.
She's rich.
She's really rich.
Real rich.
You know, she's a rich Southern man. It's fine if that's how she wants to spend her money. So.
She's basically the KFC colonel.
Exactly. So it's fine. I also think that this movie thinks that crushes are fairly arbitrary and that like crushes have nothing to do with love. Or if they do, it's like kind of happenstance. It's like, oh, you like someone and then it turns out that they're a good person. For example, when Olivia has a crush on Sebastian as played by Viola, and then literally they swap out twins. It turns out that her crush wasn't on Sebastian played by Viola, but a man she had never met, the actual Sebastian, who is interchangeable with his twin sister. You're like, okay, like attraction is kind of arbitrary and an open heart can love widely.
It's so unconvincing, particularly because in one of the scenes where you see Olivia talking about what attracts her to the Sebastian that is Viola in disguise, she specifically mentions his delicate, almost feminine beauty.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, he's not like coarse like other men. He's got this kind of delicate beauty. And I'm like, okay, one, Olivia, you're gay.
You're gay. But this movie doesn't believe in like questioning your sexuality.
It's got gay characters.
It's got gay characters. It does not believe in like straight characters as teenagers ever being like, oh, who am I attracted to? That's interesting.
I feel like there's lots of interesting queer subtext that maybe we get to in the next segment, because it is subtext, it's not text. The text is very #NoHomo.
Yes.
Can I do an unusually early emergency stop button just so I can explain for listeners who might not know what homosocial triangulation is?
Please.
Because I feel like it's going to be important to this conversation.
Go for it.
Okay, so homosocial triangulation is a concept generally linked to the work of queer theorist Eve Sedgwick, who argues that homosociality and homosexuality have more to do with each other than a lot of other previous theorists had posited. So homosociality is an idea that had already been sort of generated in feminist theory, and it's the idea that men prefer to spend time with other men. And it was theorized primarily sort of pre-Sedgwick as a way of explaining the way that patriarchal structures maintain power between and among men, that these sort of homosocial spaces, so spaces where only men can be, are where sort of power accrues. And one of the sort of ongoing questions that theorists kept bringing up was like, well, how do you make sense of the fact that patriarchal culture is so homosocial and so homophobic at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's a long history to that, the sort of deep homophobia of homosocial male culture is a relatively contemporary phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we look back, for example, to the period in which this play, Twelfth Night, was written, the kind of horror at the possibility of homosexuality is not culturally present in anywhere near the same degree.
Right.
Like, we don't see in the play Duke Orsino being like, oh no, I hugged a man, quick, make sure everybody knows I'm not gay. Like, it's kind of fine to be a little gay in Elizabethan England.
Mm-hmm.
But when we get to contemporary masculinity, which hinges not only on a sort of fundamental disdain for all things feminine, but also on a like intense heteronormativity, an intense homophobia, what we get is this sense that homosociality contains within it these sublimated queer urges that don't have a way out, and so express themselves through intimate masculine relationships that are triangulated through a female object of desire. And so that triangulation, right, the third point in the triangle, which needs to be the woman, is there basically to deal with this tension between homosociality and homosexuality. So we get, for example, the like intensely queer relationship between Duke and Viola dressed up as Sebastian, but to deal with the unsayability of queer desire, that has to be triangulated through Olivia as the object of desire, and also kind of through Viola.
Right. It's triangulated through the fact that when he's attracted to Sebastian, she's in a dress.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I think the concept of homosocial triangulation does for us in reading this movie is help us understand how it can be that it is a movie that is so clearly about the queerness of male friendship and like the possibilities of this sort of queer intimacy that emerges in the private spaces that men share, while simultaneously being like, absolutely, this is so straight.
Yeah.
Everything happening here is so straight.
Hannah, I love you introducing this concept in the context of this film. When we spoke to Kathleen Carlin, one of the things that she talked about with screwball comedies was that in the middle of a screwball comedy, it's where social order can be chaotic, right? And questioned. And there can almost be like a utopian moment where young people have more power than old people. Queerness can exist. Women can have more power than men, as long as it has a conservative ending. Like screwball comedies, always in the end, Cary Grant has tamed Katharine Hepburn, right? Like the power structures are returned. And like this movie has just like a very straight ending for the most part. There's like one little queer moment, but like Viola is in a dress and Sebastian is with a woman and like...
And Viola promises to always be a girl from now on.
Yeah. And so I like that in that way, this is a typical screwball comedy where like the utopia is in the middle, where gender and sexuality can be queered, right? This moment where Duke and Viola Sebastian hug is a very funny scene where Malvolio, the evil tarantula, has invaded their domestic space, and they are both scared of this spider.
They are equally scared of this spider and embrace one another in fear.
Yeah. This gender expectation in this quote unquote homosocial space is a space in which like he gets to be scared of the spider too. If she was in there as Viola, he would not be able to express his fear of this spider.
Yeah. And it's really central, right? Like that she gets to know him in a way that she couldn't have if he read her as a woman. Because within, again, this sort of dynamic of homosociability, emotional intimacy is a thing that men can have with each other when women are not around.
Which is said explicitly at the end also.
Which is, because it's not a subtle movie.
No.
So it does just say the moral at the end.
It does.
Just on the note of screwball comedies, I just want to put my like nerd hat back on for a quick sec.
Because it's off so frequently.
It's off so often. Yeah. Usually I'm just
you keep it in a safe, guy. Locked up with a million codes, but we'll pause for you to go get it out.
Thank you so much. Just give me a second. I always forget the combination because I open it so rarely.
So infrequently.
So 12th Night was written for 12th Night, which is, you know, part of the Elizabethan Christmas celebration. Mm-hmm. And 12th Night is exactly this kind of like screwball celebration. Mm-hmm. It is a festival in which everything gets turned upside down, all of the hierarchies are subverted, and then justice is restored at the end. And there's sort of the sense that like these moments of release and subversion function as like a social pressure valve, right? They like let off steam so that order can return in the end. But it's that historically it's serving the same function. Yeah. Like the play is doing the same kind of thing of being like, when everything turns topsy-turvy and upside down, like actually sometimes that's good.
Right.
I mean, we still need order restored in the end.
Yeah.
Like everything needs to go back. Everything really needs to be stable.
I remember that so vividly about the first time I felt as a child like I understood Purim, when my mom made me take off my wings and was like, Purim is over. And we take off our fairy wings because Purim is over. And I was like, I thought Purim was about us realizing that our enemies aren't our enemies, but they're our friends. And she was like, for 2 days. And then there are enemies again.
And then they are back to being our enemies.
I don't think she said it quite like that. She was like, you got to go to school and you don't go to a Jewish school. Take your wings off. But, you know.
She ripped off your wings and handed you a sword.
And said, go get them. And I was like, who? She was like, I don't know.
She said, our enemies.
But yeah, right. Like these subversive carnivals and moments where like there's an end day and it's when you see the third star.
Yeah, which is part of why it's fun that at the heart of this movie is a literal carnival.
Yes.
And that is where the most sort of intense gender hijinks take place, where we see Amanda Bynes switching back and forth between Viola and Sebastian again and again and again in increasingly absurd settings.
Yes. I just wish this movie was better. Because every time Viola switches between she and Sebastian, there's just no plot reason for her to be doing it.
Oh, it's so silly.
One of them, Sebastian, can just not feel great and not come. I just can't get over it. I'm like, you're putting yourself through so much, and a slightly better version of this movie would just have created the stakes in which they both have to be there. Sebastian / Viola's dad would have also been at the carnival and been like, I haven't laid my eyes on my son in a month, and if I don't see him, anything, this could be fixed with one line. And I just am like, stop doing this to yourself, you big dum-dum.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I do think it's important for the plot of this movie to remember that Viola's not super bright. So we've been talking about sexuality, which I think is pretty vital in thinking about this movie. But I think we probably also need to talk about gender, because this movie certainly posits a essentialist model of gender being synonymous with a stable notion of biological sex. There's a scene towards the end, the kind of climax of the movie, the big soccer game that Viola is trying to play in against her terrible ex, and Sebastian has returned, and Sebastian is outed as Viola and proves that he is actually a man by pulling his shorts down and showing everybody his penis.
Yep.
And then after they've swapped, Viola outs herself as being a woman. And when people are like, no, you're not, we just saw, she outs herself by pulling up her shirt and showing everybody her breasts.
Did you think the same thing I did?
Hard to say.
Where is her sports bra? She's about to play a soccer game. Why is she tits out?
I didn't think that.
Oh.
That was not what was on my mind, but a reasonable question.
I was like, where's your binder or your sports bra, lady? This makes no sense.
Yeah, she's supposed to be tightly bound in a...
And she's in a rush that morning, so I in theory get it, but I'm like, are you going to play this soccer game, which is boobs a-bumpin'? Anyway.
But yeah, so there's this moment in which the movie is like, here is what gender is. Gender is your genitals and or secondary sex organs. And that is obviously a conservative and I want to say outdated, but trans people also existed in 2006, but certainly not how we talk in a mainstream sense about gender in 2024 either. But what really struck me in that scene was, sure, both of these kids are willing to expose themselves to an entire stadium of people, but it is also a scene in which adults have decided that it is their job to police the biological sex of children, minors, playing sports. And the site of the sports game is the site where those minors are essentially forced to publicly expose themselves to assert that they are who they say they are. And yeah, in the movie, the gender that they are professing and the bodies that they expose match the scripts that everybody in that stadium are expecting. But I also think there's this real, for me, reading available there that makes that scene about the absolute horror show that is adults thinking it is in any way appropriate to be like, you think you belong here? Take your pants down. And that plays out the logical implications of transphobes' obsession with children's genitals, which is, just so you know, really gross. There's a lot of like parental rights protests happening in and around Vancouver, including at one of my dear friends' schools. She frequently has to like leave work while being screamed at by transphobes that she's a groomer. It's a nightmare. And those people are often holding signs that explicitly make reference to children's genitals.
Right.
And I just gotta say, if you are making a poster board where you write the word children's genitals on it, you're on the wrong side of history.
You're not only on the wrong side of history, you're on the wrong side of like grooming.
It's just bad. It's just, I know I'm being a hypocrite right now because I have also said the phrase several times, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it's a bad look. And the fact that the climax of this sort of exposure happens at a sports game under the behest of adults who have decided that they have the right to know what the bodies of these minors are is something. It's something. What is it, Vanessa?
I mean, it's horrifying. I will say that the adult hero, the like man who's like coded as the adult hero in this moment.
Yeah, the football coach.
Is the as we would say in America, soccer coach who like couldn't care less as to the genitals of these children and calls it out. Is like, can we get back to playing now? Like, this is a soccer match. Why don't we try playing soccer?
And I gotta say, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Vinnie Jones, the actor who plays the good coach, the one who's perfectly fine with Viola being a woman, was a professional soccer player, football. He was a football player. And like, you know, is this tough guy.
Yeah.
Like he was a real, like physically aggressive player. And then when he stopped being a professional athlete, he became an actor who plays like tough guys. And so it's really interesting that this like typically masculine coach character is the one who is like, I absolutely don't care. This is entirely inappropriate. Let's play a sport, shall we?
Yeah. No, and I loved that moment. As much as this movie really did frustrate me when he steps in, I mean, sucker for any sports movie, he steps in and is like, can we just let them play? And I like teared up, right? There's just this.
He rips the rule book in half and he says there's nothing in the rule book that says a dog can't play basketball. That's how it goes, right?
That's how Air Bud ends. Another film that I really look forward to talking about the truest love between humans and dogs.
Between dogs and basketball.
Well, what are we learning, Hannah, about our theme of high school romance?
Oh, man. I mean, one thing that I've really noticed at this point is that unless a movie is like fully about class, like Pretty in Pink is, it can just be assumed that all of the teenagers in a high school romance are super rich. These kids are rich. They do not have any problems. Like, Viola can give Duke a $300 wheel of cheese and it ain't no thing. She can reject the 7 debutante gowns that her mother has purchased for her without blinking an eye. The whole premise of like, we have 2 rich divorced parents who won't even notice whose home we're at, and we can like casually swap schools, or I can just go to London without nobody noticing. Like, where did you get the money for that flight, Sebastian? Like, money is no problem. And because all of these kids are super rich and money is not a problem, that means that all of the problems in the movie can be concentrated in the sort of social interpersonal realm, which is, I think, part of why these like classic works like Shakespeare and Jane Austen that are also really concerned with micro interactions in the social realm can map against these like rich kid high school movies so well. Because like their concerns structurally map against each other. What do you think we're learning about our theme in this movie?
What I found interesting about this movie is that there isn't a prom, but there's still a prom.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, we have a debutante ball in this one instead of a prom. And you can just imagine it being a prom, right? The mother of Viola being obsessed with her going to the prom. I think that there gets to be, like, some jokes and social commentary. Like, there's more policing of gender norms at a debutante
There's
ball.
more policing of gender norms.
Right.
Yeah, there's more scenes where Viola is explicitly being told that she does her femininity wrong.
Right.
She's open mouth chewing on a chicken leg.
I don't think that has anything to do with gender. I do think that's gross.
It's so funny. And then her mother leans over and reminds her that you women should chew like they have a secret.
So I do find it, like, structurally interesting that even though there isn't a prom, there is a prom. And that, to me, posits that high school movies think about high school as a competition, and that prom is the award ceremony where you find out how you did at high school, or in this case, the debutante ball. And, like, there are a couple of different ways I think that are, like, coded for you to win, right? Like, sometimes the stakes are literally being part of, like, the royal court at prom. But, like, really just, like, showing up and looking the hottest with the hottest date is the way to win at prom.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that high school is a competition and the way to win is to be hot.
And good at sports.
This movie I do think is different in that way, right? Because often, and you know, we've talked about, like, and or which college you're going to go to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just was like, wow, we really think that you need a moment where you show everybody up by looking hot with a hot date.
And the way that Viola shows everybody up, obviously, is wearing the dress that her mom bought her at, I assume, Sirens. Have you ever seen a more 2006 coded dress in your life?
She is the only one not in white. She's wearing green. Her mom had been showing her pink and
Bridal
white
gowns.
dresses. Yes. And instead she does wear this green, like, sheathed dress. So yeah, and, like, the key way to really win is you can't just be hot. You also have to have a hot partner, right? So you also have to be desirable.
You have to win the hottest guy or girl.
Exactly.
Because those are the only options.
Yeah, exactly.
In these movies, sorry, gender is a binary.
Yeah. And yeah, right. Like, so everybody is a trophy. Like, you are trophizing yourself and the person who in theory you love.
Yeah. I mean, hard not to see that dynamic playing out with the way the debutante ball works, with you coming out and being announced along with your date and then walking along a runway.
Yeah. So everything I know about debutante balls, I know from Gilmore Girls, but this feels different, this one. And I believe that Emily Gilmore's is more accurate, where there's, like, a dad involved giving you away.
Ugh.
Man. At least this one doesn't have that. So, Hannah, you should watch this movie if
you think Amanda Bynes is an unsung comic genius, or you're a David Cross completist, because we didn't discuss it, but David Cross has a prominent and excellent role in this movie. God. I love David Cross.
I love David Cross, too. I was delighted to see him show up.
All right, your turn. You should watch this movie if
you think all men sound Southern, or that the way to sound like a man is to have a weird Southern accent. That's how you sound like a man, Hannah.
I am the most attracted I've ever been to you.
Said as an ace person.
Really confusing. Really confusing for all of us.
I think being confused every once in a while is really important, everyone. And
that's why this movie matters.
You should watch this movie if.
The world's been making too much sense.
Well, next week we will watch the final scene, everyone. And if you want to hear us discuss which scene, Hannah.
Oh, we're gonna watch the scene where Duke tells Sebastian that he has a crush on Viola.
Can't wait. You can hear that on our Patreon at patreon.com/hotandbotheredrompod. So obviously, Hannah and I had the opportunity to talk about the cross-dressing in She's the Man. But first of all, that is a bottomless topic. And second of all, we wanted to understand the historical context of cross-dressing in film. This is happening in 2006. She's the Man. It's obviously in conversation with a Renaissance play that involves cross-dressing, not just in terms of the actors, but in terms of the plot. But we wanted to make sure that we understood the historical context in general of cross-dressing in film. And so we got not just an expert, but kind of the expert on the topic on the phone. And that is Professor Laura Horak. Laura is the professor of film studies at Carleton University and the director of the Transgender Media Lab and Transgender Media Portal. She investigates the history of transgender and queer film and media in the US, Canada, and Sweden, and is the author of Girls Will Be Boys, Cross-Dressing Women, Lesbians, and American Cinema, and is the co-curator of the 99 film Blu-ray set, Cinema's First Nasty Women. Let's get Laura on the phone. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Thank you so much for getting on the phone with me today. I'm so excited to talk to you about this incredible field of study that you do. Okay, so in the introduction to your book, you write about how different scholars read cross-dressed women as mirrors of their own concern. Can you please tell me about that?
Yeah, so when I first started on this subject, when I was an undergrad back in the 90s and 2000s, there was a lot of writing about cross-dressed women. There was a real interest. And what I noticed was that feminist scholars saw cross-dressed women as an exemplar of feminism, taking on male roles, like upsetting the gender hierarchy. And lesbian scholars tended to read them as an exemplar of lesbianism. So it was a way for women to court other women, to live together, to express the kind of butch femininity. And at that point, there was new scholarship coming out from trans scholars who also saw them as part of the history of kind of gender variance and were interested in how their masculinity was perhaps something that was desirable in and of itself, not as a mode of kind of getting at something else, like a men's job or getting at the ability to court a woman. And so I think it's really hard to know what's going on in the past. Sadly, like most people didn't keep diaries where they're like, here's how I understand things.
Here is my agenda in writing this film in this way.
Exactly. Like, just in case you're curious, the way I interpret this is like that. Yeah. So I felt, though, that what was happening was that everyone was so eager to see them in their own image that it was really hard to know, like, how were they getting away with this in the first place, or what might people have understood of cross-dressed women back then.
So you have identified 3 waves of cross-dressed women in early cinema. The first wave is female actresses who were actually playing boy characters. I'm wondering if you can tell me why that stopped, especially in the context of Shakespeare, where the opposite was true for so long. What was that phenomenon about, and why did it stop?
Yeah, this is something we really forget about film history, is that there was several decades where grown women, as well as young women, children, played male roles. And it wasn't them disguising themselves, temporarily, but they just played the role of, like, Oliver Twist, or the 2 roles of Prince and the Pauper.
Peter Pan, I feel like this is constantly happening.
Yes, Peter Pan is the sort of through line that has continued to this day, whereas it is sort of dropped out. And I do have a theory. So first off, as you say, in Shakespeare's time, all the roles would have been played by men, and including young men playing female roles. That was also common in Greek theater, in Chinese and Japanese, and Indian, certain forms of theater. So there was lots of places where it was like inappropriate to see women on stage, and so men played all the roles. But there were also theatrical traditions of women playing all the roles on stage in Europe and North America, in burlesques. They would have women play all the roles, but it would be kind of comical, or there'd be music. And part of the attraction was seeing women in tights and these sort of small outfits, which were like much more revealing than women's outfits, and corsets and things at the time. So
you can dress as men as long as we're still objectifying you through the male gaze.
yeah, exactly. So it's a kind of
Great.
double-edged sword there. And they're also like in all women's schools, like women would play all the roles.
Sure.
In Japan, there's a review that still has all of the roles played by women. And so it's a smaller tradition than the men playing women's roles, but it still has existed in many different places throughout history. So when they first created cinema, it was more of a kind of lower class popular thing. And they wanted to get more middle class women and families and grandmothers to come to the cinema. And so one of the ways they did that was by adopting this practice from the theater that was very popular in theater then, to have women play boy roles specifically and adolescent boy roles. There was the sense that men actors were too kind of like vulgar and too coarse to play young boys, innocent boys properly, and that women could do a better job. And so that was true on stage. And then it only made sense in the new medium if you wanted to bring those same crowds to your cinema theaters and those upper and middle class women. They did the same thing. So they adapted many of the plays that were on Broadway at the time or that had circulated in the US. And generally speaking, it was in boy roles where they were kind of beautiful and innocent, and they often suffered. There was often tragedies. They were poor, they were orphans, they got run over, and like were considered this kind of ideal of the romantic child.
Yeah. Why did it end?
Yeah. So I don't know for sure. But my theory is that you have the rise of a kind of more masculine version of boyhood, an ideal of boyhood that's more kind of rough and tumble and like, fighting and physically fit. That was part of a whole kind of cultural turn away from this more romantic ideal of virtue and sanctity towards like this kind of frontier masculinity that was like, hard and tough and could defend America from, foreign threats and things.
Right.
Yeah. So in the teens and 20s, you see like an overall shift in kind of valorization of this other kind of masculinity. And so it went with child roles too. So when you see young boy performers like Jackie Coogan, who played a lot of roles, his roles are very similar to those of the female boys.
Yeah.
But in interviews with him, he's like, oh yeah, I like to rough up my woman and tell her what to do, even though like she's 12 or something, he's very young. But it's part of this like ideal, a different kind of ideal of masculinity.
I idealize forms of masculinity that are about roughing up women. So I'm so glad.
It was great.
Yeah. It's great for everyone. When does cross-dressing start to signal lesbianism?
Yeah, so that's what's so interesting. That's really the question that drove my book, because I couldn't understand why there were so many films that seemed so queer to me, but they were not censored and they circulated and were wholesome and family fun,
You're like, this is gay, right?
Right? And like, you're not into gays, I thought. Like, so what? How is this working? Because there was a ton of like attempts to censor films. There was censorship by police. There were women's groups complaining. Like slapstick comedy and French films were censored left, right, and center. So it's not that there wasn't censorship. It's just that censorship didn't care about women dressed as men, even that when they were flirting with other women and beating up police. Like the censors didn't care. So why not? What I figured out is that there were so many different ways to understand cross-dressed women. That's probably why they're so popular. That's why they kind of remain popular for scholars and critics to be like having theories about. And the long tradition of cross-dressing in romantic farces. Like it was such an established tradition that it wasn't anything special or notable to see it happening in cinema, even when those costumes are used to create, situations like same-sex flirtation and kissing and things. Also in Europe, in France and Germany, they were a little more clued in to cross-dressing as one of the strategies of people who lived as men, who were assigned female, or people who were women who dated and loved women. Like in Europe, they were a little more clued into that. But in the US, it was not such a sort of cosmopolitan place. It was also sort of spread out, and a lot of these communities existed in big cities, and it wasn't well known across the country that this could be a code for lesbianism. And so it was only in the 1920s, with the incredible media storm around the play The Captive, a French play that is explicitly about a woman who loves another woman, that was so controversial, and it was covered in newspapers across the country for weeks and months on end.
Across the U.S.?
Across the U.S., yes. That by the end, there was no one in the U.S. who could conceivably not have read about, like, this is what a lesbian is, these are the signs of it, this is what sapphism means, this is, like, you should be suspicious if your wife is, like, too close to her female friends and wants to see them late at night. You know, even though there was actually no cross-dressing or masculinity, but it just sort of made this whole concept completely widely known, and was just argued about for like a year. And so then Hollywood's like, ooh, this is the end thing. Like now everyone's wondering about lesbians. So like, let's especially bringing in some European stars and writers and directors. We can have this be like the new kind of scandalous thing. And so this is when you have Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich and these films that are really flirting with the idea of the lesbian. And so it's only after that, and then Hollywood gets the backlash for in general being immoral and kind of corrupting its audience. And so that's when you start to get the actual prohibitions against same-sex desire. But it's funny because it was only in the late 20s that Hollywood sort of jumped on the lesbian bandwagon and used cross-dressing as one of the possible signs of that. And then only like 5 or 6 years later, they're like, oh no, that was like too much to let out of the bottle at once. Like we have to reel that back or we're going to get in trouble.
I love this. I absolutely love this. Okay, so we're going to fast forward almost exactly 100 years. Our movie takes place, She's the Man takes place in 2006. When you take that historical context into account, what should our listeners be thinking about as they watch the cross-dressing that happens in She's the Man?
Well, for one, Chris Strayer, professor at NYU, has written a great piece about this particular genre that he calls the temporary transvestite genre. So that is where a character has to disguise their gender for some practical reason, and then there's all these kind of like jokes that happen because it's difficult for them to fully embody this other gender. And it also leads to accidental kind of same-sex kisses.
Oops.
Yeah. And at the end, there's a big reveal. I think it's one of the funniest reveals in this type of film because normally, or in previous films, like a woman would let her hair down, a cross-dressed woman. She'd take off a wig or a hat or something.
Sure.
And then the hair would be long and it'd be like, oh my God, she's really a woman because like she has long hair. Like it's impossible that like a man could have long hair. But with
in just one of the guys, you see boobs.
Yeah, exactly. She like brings up her shirt. So it's like it's moved to like a more, when was it? It's a 2000?
1985 is one of the guys in 2006. We don't actually see boobs in this.
You don't see boobs in the most recent one, but you do in the
right. Yeah. But you get hinted at the way to find out is not through hair, but through genitals.
Yeah, exactly. Because you also have her brother taking off his pants in front of everyone. So, right. I mean, one of the things that is unfortunate, I think, about more recent temporary transvestite films like this one is that back in 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago, trans people certainly existed, but there was not a kind of widespread cultural knowledge of that. And so cross-dressing was one of the few ways that trans people could sort of see kind of transy representations, like things that might evoke some kind of familiarity or shared laughter. But once, culture becomes well aware that trans people exist, which certainly happened in the US in the 90s, then the fact that like you're showing off your genitals to prove what real gender you are is like, it's kind of anti-trans. So funnily enough, like this genre that started out being a kind of celebration of gender crossing, and I think still in its middle section can operate like that. In its end, where it sort of shows you the real gender, it looks to the body as being like the authority on gender, which is an incomplete way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I actually used to show She's the Man in my one of my analyzing gender, sexuality, and cinema courses, because it does adhere to this old formula so well, but with this new modern take on it where they are aware of like gay people. So She's the Man doesn't realize that trans people exist, but it's well aware that gay people exist. Right?
I know, it's so funny.
And so that's the constant danger, is that the cross-dressed person will be gay, the cross-dressed person making other people gay, the brother maybe is mistaken to be gay. Like, so that's a constant concern, is that this cross-dressing is just producing gayness like left, right, and center.
Which we know, gayness, obviously a transmittable disease. So everybody be careful, mask up.
Yeah, exactly.
Laura, thank you so much, not just for joining us today, but for your tremendous scholarship. I'm just so grateful to you.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this podcast.
You've been listening to Hot and Bothered. If you are enjoying our analysis, there's so much more of it on Patreon. Bonus scene studies with Hannah, bonus movies with our producer Ariana, weekly co-working Zooms. We read old reviews and try to understand how these movies were perceived in the context of when they came out. And so much more. Check it out at patreon.com/hotandbotheredrompod. Another way you can support the show, which is free, is by leaving us a review full of compliments wherever you are listening right now. It helps people find the show, and we really like it when people find the show. We are a Not Sorry production. I'm the executive producer. We are edited and produced by Ariana Nettleman and distributed by Acast. As always, we love our soulmate level patrons who are our heroes and make this podcast possible. Molly Reilly, who we would chase through the airport to declare our love to. Becky Boo, who we would wait for hours on the top of the Empire State Building for. Elizabeth Schweinsberg, whose heart we would play a game of one-on-one basketball for. And Lauren Bayer O'Connell, who we would call up on stage to dance with us in front of the whole summer camp. And our wonderful team, Julia Argy, Nikki Zoltan, AJ Aramas, Courtney Brown, Anissa Ahmed, Danny Langley, and Stephanie Paulsell. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.